The wind screamed like a wounded animal, hurling ice crystals that felt like shattered glass against Sage's exposed cheeks. She pulled her scarf tighter, squinting through the whiteout conditions that had transformed the familiar forest into an alien landscape. The blizzard had rolled in fast, too fast, but her traps wouldn't check themselves, and she'd learned the hard way that in these mountains you couldn't afford to lose even a single rabbit to scavengers or weather. "Stupid, stupid, stupid," she muttered to herself, her words instantly swallowed by the howling wind. 3 years of living alone should have taught her better than to venture out in conditions like this. But 3 years of living alone had also taught her that hunger cared nothing for storms, and her supply shed was running dangerously low. The first 2 traps were empty, their triggers sprung by falling branches. Sage reset them with fingers that had long since gone past cold and into the dangerous territory of numb. She was heading toward the 3rd trap, following a route she could walk blindfolded, when something made her stop. It wasn't a sound. The storm was too loud for that. It wasn't a scent either, not with the wind changing direction every few seconds. It was something else, something deeper. An itch between her shoulder blades, a pull in her chest that felt almost like... No. She didn't let herself finish that thought. She didn't have a wolf. Cursed, they'd called her. Broken. Wrong. But the pull persisted, tugging her off the path toward the dense pine grove where she rarely ventured. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "Trust your instincts, little one. They're all you have when everything else fails." Sage pushed through a wall of snow-laden branches, and that's when she saw it. Blood. Not just a few drops, but a trail of it, stark crimson against the pristine white. Fresh enough that the falling snow hadn't completely covered it yet. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she followed the trail, every survival instinct she possessed screaming at her to turn back, to run, to save herself. She found him in a small clearing, collapsed in a snowdrift that was rapidly becoming his tomb. "Oh, God," Sage breathed, the words torn from her lungs. He was massive, easily the largest wolf she'd ever seen. Even larger than the alphas who had escorted her to the border 3 years ago and told her never to return. His fur was the colour of moonlight on water. That rare silver that seemed to glow even in the storm's grey light, but it was matted now with snow and something else. Foam flecked his muzzle, pink tinged with blood. His body convulsed in a way that made Sage's stomach twist with recognition. Poison. She should leave. Every rational thought in her head told her to walk away. Getting involved with pack wolves had destroyed her life once already. This wasn't her problem. He probably had a pack somewhere, wolves who would come looking for him. Important wolves, if his size and colouring were any indication. Sage actually took a step backward, ready to retreat. Then his eyes opened. Just for a moment, just a sliver of consciousness fighting through the poison and the pain. But in that moment, she saw them clearly. Gold. Pure, molten gold. "No," she whispered. Even as her knees hit the snow beside him, "No, no, no, you can't be. Royalty. Only the royal bloodlines carried eyes like that. The old gold of ancient power, the mark of kings and queens." She'd only seen it once before, when the Alpha King himself had visited her old pack for a treaty negotiation. She'd been 14, still harbouring hopes that her wolf would come, still believing she had a future. The wolf's eyes closed again, and his breathing grew more laboured. Another convulsion racked his body. "I'm nobody," Sage told him, her voice cracking. "I can't help you. I'm cursed, broken. I don't even have a wolf. If you die, they'll blame me. They'll say I killed you. They'll..." His chest rose and fell, each breath more shallow than the last. "Damn it!" Sage yanked off her gloves and pressed her hands to his massive head, feeling for a pulse. It was there, but thready and irregular. She'd seen this before, years ago, when a pack member had been poisoned by tainted prey. The healer had said the wolf needed to be kept warm, needed fluids, needed the pack bond to help fight the toxin. This wolf had none of that. He would die here in the snow, alone and forgotten. Unless she did something monumentally stupid. "I'm going to regret this," she muttered, pushing to her feet. "I'm going to regret this so much." The makeshift sled took precious minutes she didn't have. She used her hunting knife to cut branches from the nearby pines, lashing them together with the rope she always carried. Her fingers fumbled with the knots, too cold and shaking from more than just the temperature. When she finally had something that might hold his weight. She manoeuvred it next to him. Getting him onto the sled was another nightmare entirely. He had to weigh at least 200 pounds, maybe more. Sage was strong from 3 years of surviving alone, but she wasn't that strong. She tried pushing. She tried pulling. She tried levering him with a branch. Nothing worked. "Please," she finally gasped, slumping against his massive form. The wind had picked up even more, if that was possible, and visibility had dropped to nearly zero. "Please, you have to help me. I can't do this alone. I can't." Something shifted. For a moment, she thought she'd imagined it. Then she felt it again. The wolf's body tensing, muscles bunching as he used what had to be his last reserves of strength to help her roll him onto the sled. "That's it," Sage encouraged, tears freezing on her cheeks. "Just a little more. Come on, Your Majesty, or Your Highness, or whatever the hell you are. Work with me here." With a final heave that left them both gasping, he was on the sled. Sage didn't give herself time to think about what came next. She grabbed the rope handles she'd fashioned, braced her feet in the snow, and pulled. He didn't budge. "No," she growled, pulling harder. "No, I didn't drag you onto this thing just to leave you here. Move, damn you, move!" The sled shifted an inch, then another. Sage leaned her entire body weight into it, her boots slipping in the snow, her muscles screaming in protest. But it was moving, slowly, agonizingly slowly, but moving. 6 miles. She had to cover 6 miles in whiteout conditions, in a blizzard that was rapidly becoming the worst she'd seen in 3 years. Dragging a wolf who probably outweighed her by 100 pounds. She made it maybe 50 feet before she fell the first time. The snow cushioned her fall, but the rope burned her palms as it slipped through her grip. She lay there for a moment, gasping, every part of her body demanding that she just stay down. Just rest. Just give up. "Get up," she told herself. "Get up, Sage. Get up." She got up. The next mile was a blur of putting one foot in front of the other, of pulling until her shoulders felt like they would dislocate, of falling and rising and falling again. She lost feeling in her hands completely. Her face had gone numb. Ice crusted her eyelashes, making it hard to blink. Halfway there, she made the mistake of checking on him. He was still breathing, but barely. The convulsions had stopped, which she knew wasn't a good sign. It meant the poison was winning, shutting down his system bit by bit. She pressed her frozen fingers to his neck, feeling for a pulse. It was barely there. "Don't you dare," she hissed at him, her voice raw from screaming against the wind. "Don't you dare die on me. Not after everything. Not after—" Her voice broke. She didn't even know why she was crying. She didn't know this wolf. He wasn't her pack, wasn't her friend, wasn't her anything. But the thought of him dying, of that light going out of those gold eyes, made something crack in her chest. "I'm so tired of death," she whispered. The confession pulled from somewhere deep inside her. "I'm so tired of losing everyone. Please don't make me lose you too." The wolf didn't respond, couldn't respond, but Sage could have sworn she felt something, a warmth, a flicker, a whisper of connection that made absolutely no sense. She picked up the rope and kept pulling. The landmark she knew started appearing through the snow. The split pine where lightning had struck 2 summers ago. The boulder shaped like a sitting bear, the frozen creek that marked the final mile to her cabin. Her cabin, safety, warmth, medicine. Sage's vision had started to blur, dark spots dancing at the edges. She knew the signs of hypothermia, had seen them before. She was running out of time. They both were. Almost there, she panted, though she wasn't sure if she was talking to him or herself. Almost home, just a little further, just... Her foot caught on a hidden root and she went down hard. This time, she couldn't get up as quickly. Her limbs felt like lead, heavy and unresponsive. The cold had seeped into her bones, making everything slow and difficult. Through the snow, she could just make out the dark shape of her cabin. 100 yards, maybe less. Might as well have been 100 miles. I can't, she sobbed, the words barely audible. I can't do it. I'm sorry. I tried. I really tried. But I can't. Get up. The voice was in her head, deep and resonant and utterly impossible. Sage's eyes flew open, searching for the source, but there was no one else in the clearing, just her and the dying wolf and the merciless storm. Get up, little one. We're so close. I'm hallucinating, Sage decided, but she was struggling to her feet anyway, reaching for the rope with hands that had stopped feeling like they belonged to her. Hypothermia, that's all this is. My brain's shutting down. Your brain is fine. Your will is stronger than you know. Now pull. She pulled. Later, Sage would never remember covering those final 100 yards. Her body moved on autopilot, driven by something beyond conscious thought, beyond physical capability. One foot, then another. Pull, breathe, pull, breathe. The cabin door appeared in front of her like a miracle. She'd left it unlocked. She always did. What was the point of locks when you were the only soul for miles? And it swung open under her weight as she half collapsed against it. The wolf, the sled, everything crashed into her tiny front room. Sage kicked the door shut against the wind and crawled to the fireplace, where embers from that morning's fire still glowed faintly. With the last of her strength, she added kindling, blowing gently until flames caught and spread. Warmth, finally, blessed warmth. She turned back to check on the wolf, to see if he'd survived the journey, and that's when her body finally gave out. The adrenaline that had been keeping her going evaporated all at once, leaving her hollow and spent. The room tilted sideways, and Sage felt herself falling, falling, falling. Strong arms caught her. Impossible because there was no one else here, but she felt them anyway. Felt herself being lowered gently to the worn rug in front of the fire. Felt a hand brush the ice-crusted hair from her face. With the last of her consciousness, Sage forced her eyes open. The wolf was gone. In his place knelt a man. Tall, powerful, with silver hair that fell past his shoulders and skin marked with swirling black tattoos that seemed to move in the firelight. But it was his eyes that held her captive. Gold. Pure, molten gold. Burning with an intensity that stole what little breath she had left. Mate, he said, and the word resonated through every cell in her body, igniting something she'd thought was dead and buried. His voice was the same one she'd heard in her head, rough and rich and utterly certain. My mate. Impossible, Sage tried to say, but darkness was already pulling her under. I don't have a wolf. I can't be anyone's. But the darkness swallowed the rest of her words, and Sage knew nothing more. Wanting to see what would happen next, subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Chapter 2. The first thing Sage became aware of was warmth. Real warmth, not the desperate heat of exertion or the brief respite of a flickering fire, but deep, bone-soaking warmth that made her want to burrow deeper into her blankets and never move again. The second thing she became aware of was that she wasn't in her usual sleeping spot on the floor by the fireplace. She was in her bed. Her eyes snapped open and she immediately regretted the movement. Her head pounded like someone had used it for drum practice, and every muscle in her body screamed in protest. The events of the previous night came flooding back. The blizzard, the blood in the snow, the silver wolf with golden eyes dragging him home through the storm. The man. Sage jackknifed upright, ignoring the way the room spun, and that's when she saw him. He was sitting in the chair she'd salvaged from an abandoned homestead 2 years ago, positioned at the foot of her bed like a sentinel. Even-seated and clearly weakened. He was the most imposing man she'd ever seen. He had to be well over 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders that strained against the blanket he'd wrapped around himself. His silver hair, the same impossible shade as his wolf's fur, hung loose around a face that was all sharp angles and hard edges, beautiful in the way a winter storm was beautiful, dangerous, untamed. And those eyes, God, those eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel like prey. "You're awake," he said, his voice the same deep rumble she'd heard in her head during the storm. "Good. We need to talk? Get out of my house." The words came out stronger than Sage felt. But 3 years of surviving alone had taught her to never show weakness. One silver eyebrow arched. "Your house? I believe you mean the house where you're keeping the Alpha King hostage." "Hostage?" Sage threw back her blankets on her bed, which this stranger had apparently put her in, and stood on shaky legs. "I saved your life, you arrogant— Wait, did you say Alpha King?" "Daemon Shadowmere." He inclined his head in a gesture that was probably meant to be polite, but came off as regal. "Alpha King of the North American Continental Pack, and you are my mate." The word hit her like a physical blow. Sage actually stumbled back a step, catching herself on the bedpost. "No, absolutely not. That's not possible. I assure you, it's very possible." Daemon started to rise from the chair, and Sage saw the flash of pain cross his features before he controlled it. He was still weak, she realized, still recovering. "I recognized you the moment I regained consciousness. Your scent, your essence, the pull." "Stop." Sage held up a hand, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. "Just stop. I don't know what you think you felt, but you're wrong. I can't be anyone's mate." "Because you're wolfless?" His tone wasn't mocking, merely curious, but it still made her flinch. "I admit, it's unusual. I've never heard of a fated mate bond with a human, but the moon goddess works in mysterious—" "I'm not human." The admission slipped out before she could stop it, sharp and bitter. "I'm just broken." Something flickered in those gold eyes. Understanding, maybe, or pity. Sage hated both options equally. Before Daemon could respond, she turned away and busied herself checking the fire, adding logs with hands that trembled slightly. The mundane task helped ground her, gave her something to focus on besides the impossible man sitting in her bedroom. "Tell me what happened to you," Daemon said quietly. "Please." The please surprised her enough that she actually looked at him again. He'd settled back into the chair, the blanket slipping to reveal a chest covered in those swirling black tattoos she'd glimpsed the night before. They were pack marks, she realized, but far more extensive than she'd ever seen. They covered his shoulders, wrapped around his biceps, disappeared beneath the blanket. A living history written on his skin. "Why do you care?" Sage kept her tone flat, emotionless. "You're a king. I'm nobody. Once you're strong enough to travel, you'll leave and forget I exist. I'm your mate. I could never forget you exist." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. And the blanket slipped further. Sage deliberately focused on his face. "And you're not nobody. You saved my life when you could have left me to die. You dragged me 6 miles through a blizzard that should have killed you both. That's not nothing." "It was stupid," Sage muttered, but she felt her walls cracking slightly. There was something about his voice, his presence, that made her want to trust him. The mate bond, she supposed, that impossible thing she'd dreamed about as a girl, but never thought she'd experience. I should have left you there. But you didn't. Why? Sage was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. Your eyes, she finally admitted. When they opened, when I saw the gold, I knew you were important. That people would come looking for you, that your death would mean something. She laughed, harsh and humorless, unlike mine. Sage. My pack cast me out 3 years ago, she interrupted, the words spilling out now like water from a broken dam. I was supposed to shift at 18 like everyone else. 17 came and went, then 18, then 19. The pack elders said I was cursed, that my presence was an insult to the moon goddess. They performed the rite of severing and escorted me to the border, told me if I ever came back they'd kill me. She heard Damon draw in a sharp breath, but she didn't look at him, couldn't look at him. I built this cabin from salvaged materials, taught myself to hunt, to trap, to survive. It's not much, but it's mine, and no one can take it from me. Now she did turn to face him, lifting her chin. So forgive me if I'm not exactly thrilled about the idea of being someone's mate, especially an alpha. Every alpha I've ever known has brought me nothing but pain. Damon was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he said, I'm sorry that happened to you. The rite of severing is an ancient law, meant only for wolves who've committed unforgivable crimes against their pack. Using it on a young woman whose only crime was a delayed shift, or no shift at all, is barbaric. The validation, unexpected and genuine, made Sage's throat tighten. She swallowed hard and turned back to the fire. It doesn't matter now, that life is over. What pack? His voice had taken on a hard edge. What pack did this to you? Why? So you can punish them? Assert your kingly authority? Sage shook her head. I don't need you to fight my battles. It's not about fighting your battles. It's about justice. Damon tried to stand again, made it halfway before his legs gave out. He caught himself on the chair, breathing hard. Damn it! Despite everything, her anger, her fear, her determination to keep her distance, Sage found herself crossing to him. You need to rest. The wolfsbane is still in your system. You should be dead. So I've been told. He looked up at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes caught her off guard. How long was I unconscious? All night and most of today. It's late afternoon now. Sage hesitated, then touched his forehead, checking for fever. His skin was hot, but not dangerously so. You shifted back about an hour after I got you inside. I thought you were dying. You were convulsing, foam at your mouth, bleeding from, well, everywhere. But you saved me anyway. I gave you water mixed with activated charcoal from my stores, kept you warm, monitored your breathing. She pulled her hand back, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. Basic field medicine, nothing special. Basic field medicine wouldn't have saved me from silver and wolfsbane poisoning. Damon caught her wrist before she could move away, his grip gentle but firm. There's something else. Something you did, even if you don't realize it. Sage tried to pull free, but he held fast. I don't know what you're talking about. When I was dying, when the poison was shutting down my body, I felt something. A coolness that pushed back against the burning, like ice water in my veins, washing away the toxins. His thumb traced circles on her inner wrist, and Sage hated how good it felt. It wasn't the charcoal, it was you. That's impossible. I told you I don't have a wolf. I can't access pack magic or healing abilities or any of that. Maybe not pack magic. Damon's eyes searched hers. But there's power in you, Sage. I can feel it. Can't you? She yanked her hand free, stepping back so quickly she nearly tripped. No. There's nothing in me but a broken bond and a missing wolf. That's it. But even as she said it, she remembered. The way the temperature seemed to drop when she was stressed. The frost that formed on the windows when she woke from nightmares. The way the snow seemed to respond to her sometimes, swirling in patterns that felt almost deliberate. Coincidence? All of it just coincidence. "Tell me what happened at the Alpha Summit," she said, desperate to change the subject. "You said someone poisoned you?" Damon's expression hardened. The summit was called to address territory disputes in the western regions. All the major alphas attended, along with their betas and guards. Everything was proceeding normally until the feast on the second night. He paused, and Sage saw his jaw clench. The wine was poisoned, silver and wolfsbane, mixed in a concentration that should have killed me within minutes. But it didn't. I have some immunity to silver, built up over years of training, and I felt it immediately. The burning, the weakness. I shifted and ran before my guards could stop me. I knew if I stayed, whoever did this would finish the job. He met her eyes. I ran for 2 days straight, the poison spreading through my system, my wolf fighting to keep me alive. I finally collapsed in that clearing, certain I was going to die alone in the snow. "But you didn't," Sage said softly, "because I'm apparently incapable of minding my own business." That pulled a surprised laugh from him, rough and genuine. Thank the moon goddess for that. The moment stretched between them, charged with something Sage didn't want to name. The mate bond, she realized, was pulling at her even now, urging her to move closer, to touch him, to accept what he was offering. But accepting meant trusting. Trusting meant vulnerability, and vulnerability had nearly destroyed her once before. "You should eat," she said abruptly, moving to the small kitchen area. "I have venison stew from yesterday. It's not much, but—" "Sage." The way he said her name stopped her mid-step. "I know you're afraid. I know alphas have hurt you, and your pack betrayed you in the worst way possible, but I need you to understand something." She didn't turn around. "What?" "You are my mate. That's not a claim or a demand. It's a fact, as undeniable as the sun rising. And while I hope you'll choose to accept that bond, to come back to my territory with me, I won't force you." She heard him shift in the chair, heard the slight grunt of pain he tried to suppress. "You've had enough of people making choices for you. I won't be another one." The words were so unexpected, so different from what she'd anticipated, that Sage actually turned to look at him. "You're not going to command me? Pull rank? Tell me it's my destiny or duty or whatever? Would it work if I did? No? Then there's your answer." He attempted a smile, and despite everything, Sage felt something warm unfurl in her chest. "Besides, I've learned that the most valuable wolves in my pack are the ones who choose to be there, not the ones forced into service." Before Sage could respond, before she could even begin to process what he was offering, a sound made them both freeze. Footsteps. Multiple sets of them, crunching through the snow outside. Damon's entire demeanor changed in an instant. The weakened man who'd been struggling to stand transformed into something lethal, something that radiated power despite his physical state. He rose from the chair, moving to position himself between Sage and the door. "How many?" she whispered. "At least 5, maybe more." His eyes had gone hard, calculating. "They've found me." "Your guards?" "Some of them, yes. I can feel my beta. He's close." Damon's expression darkened. "But there's someone else with them. Someone who shouldn't be here." The door burst open before Sage could ask what he meant. 3 massive wolves in human form filled her small cabin, their presence making the space feel suddenly claustrophobic. They all had the same tattoos as Damon, though less extensive, marking them as his pack. His inner circle, the one in front, dark-haired, with eyes like storm clouds, took one look at Damon and dropped to his knees. "My king, thank the goddess. We thought—" "I know what you thought, Kale." Damon's voice held the weight of absolute authority. "Report." Kale, his beta, Sage assumed, rose fluidly. His eyes flicked to Sage, assessing her with a kind of intensity that made her want to shift uncomfortably. "We tracked your scent from the summit. The trail was difficult with the storm, but we had trackers working in shifts. When we realized you'd stopped moving—" He paused, and Sage saw genuine emotion cross his features. We feared the worst. The poison nearly killed me. It would have, if not for her. Daemon gestured to Sage, who was trying very hard to make herself small in the corner of her own cabin. This is Sage. She saved my life. The way he said it, the pride and warmth in his voice, made all three guards look at her with new eyes. Chaol's expression shifted from assessment to something like shock. She's... he began, but another voice cut him off. How touching. The cursed Omega playing nurse to the great Alpha King. A fourth man entered the cabin, and Sage knew immediately that this was the person Daemon had sensed. He was tall and broad like the others, with the same silver hair as Daemon but worn shorter. His eyes were a pale gold, not the rich molten colour of Daemon's, and they held a cruelty that made Sage's skin crawl. Marcus, Daemon's voice could have frozen fire. I specifically ordered you to remain at the summit and help coordinate the investigation. Marcus smiled, all teeth and no warmth. And I thought finding you alive was more important than following orders. Clearly, I was right. His eyes slid to Sage again. Though I am curious how this creature managed to save you when Wolfsbane and Silver were killing you. Perhaps she's the one who poisoned you in the first place. The temperature in the cabin dropped so suddenly that Sage's breath misted in front of her face. Frost began forming on the windows, spreading in crystalline patterns that looked almost deliberate. Everyone turned to stare at her. I didn't, Sage stammered, but she could see the ice forming on the glass, could feel the cold radiating from her skin. This isn't... I can't... Fascinating, Marcus murmured, taking a step toward her. The cursed wolf, who isn't cursed at all. What else are you hiding, little Omega? Daemon moved faster than Sage would have thought possible for someone still recovering from poison. One moment he was across the room, the next he was in front of her, a living shield between her and Marcus. The display of dominance was unmistakable. She is under my protection, Daemon said, his voice dropping into a register that made Sage's bones vibrate. And she is my mate. Touch her, threaten her, even look at her wrong, and I will end you, cousin or not. The silence that followed was deafening. Chaol looked like someone had hit him with a brick. The other two guards were staring at Sage like she'd grown a second head. And Marcus's expression had gone from cruel amusement to something much more dangerous. Your mate? He repeated softly. How convenient. You're poisoned at the summit, disappear into the wilderness, and suddenly you've found your fated mate in a wolfless Omega who just happens to have unexplained ice powers. He laughed, sharp and bitter. Forgive me, cousin, but that seems rather unlikely. I don't care what you think is likely. Daemon's power filled the room, pressing against Sage's skin like a physical weight. The bond is real. And when we return to the capital, Sage will be recognized as my mate and future queen. No. The word escaped Sage before she could stop it. All eyes turned to her. I mean, I haven't agreed to anything. I told you, I'm not going to your territory. Sage, Daemon began. But Marcus interrupted with another laugh. Oh, this is perfect. Your mate doesn't even want you. He turned to Chaol. Perhaps we should leave the Alpha King to his domestic troubles and focus on finding the real threat, the one who poisoned him in the first place. You mean yourself? Daemon's words dropped into the room like stones. Did you think I wouldn't figure it out, Marcus? You were the one who poured my wine that night, the only one with access besides the servers. The shift in atmosphere was instantaneous. Chaol and the other guards moved to flank Daemon, their bodies tense and ready. Marcus just smiled, but there was murder in his pale gold eyes. You can't prove anything, he said calmly, and even if you could, who would believe it? The great Alpha King, poisoned and delirious, making wild accusations against his own blood? I would believe it, Chaol said quietly, and so would the council, once they examine the evidence. What evidence? Marcus's smile widened. The king is clearly still affected by the poison, hallucinating, bonding with wolfless strays. Perhaps he's not fit to lead anymore. Perhaps the pack needs new leadership. Daemon moved so fast, Sage barely saw it. One moment, Marcus was standing by the door. The next, Daemon had him by the throat, lifted off his feet and slammed against the wall. The whole cabin shook from the impact. "You tried to kill me," Daemon growled, and his voice wasn't entirely human anymore. "Poison me at a sacred summit in front of all the packs, and when that didn't work, you came here to finish the job." Marcus clawed at Daemon's hand, his face turning red. "You're weak? Still poisoned? You can't—" The temperature in the cabin plummeted again, and this time, Sage felt it pulling from her, felt the power rushing out like water from a broken dam. Ice spread across the walls, the floor, climbing up Daemon and Marcus like living vines. It wrapped around Marcus's legs, his arms, until he was encased from the neck down. Sage stared at her hands, at the frost coating her fingers, and finally understood. She wasn't broken. She'd never been broken. She was something else entirely. Wanting to see what would happen next, subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Chapter 3. The ice held Marcus suspended against the wall like an insect in amber. But the rage in his pale gold eyes was very much alive. Sage stared at her frost-covered hands, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. The power that had exploded from her was already receding, leaving her feeling hollowed out and strange, as if her skin didn't quite fit anymore. "Sage," Daemon's voice cut through her spiraling panic. He'd released Marcus's throat and was turning toward her, those molten gold eyes filled with something between wonder and concern. "It's all right. Just breathe. The power won't hurt you. Won't hurt me." Her laugh came out brittle and slightly hysterical. I froze him. I made ice with my bare hands. That's not possible, that's not—" "My king." One of the guards who'd entered with Kyle stepped forward, his hand on his weapon. He was younger than the others, with copper-coloured hair and suspicious eyes. "We should secure the Omega, until we can verify. You will not lay a hand on her, Garrett." Daemon's voice dropped to that bone-vibrating register again. "She is my mate. Anyone who threatens her threatens me directly." "With all due respect, Your Majesty," Garrett pressed, and Sage could see the fear in his eyes as he looked at her. "We have only your word that she's your mate. And Marcus does raise valid questions about the timing." "You dare question your Alpha King?" Kale's voice was deadly quiet. "I question nothing." Garrett's hand tightened on his weapon. "But look at the evidence. The king is poisoned at the summit. He disappears into a blizzard and ends up in the cabin of an Omega who was banished from her pack. An Omega who now suddenly displays powers we've never seen before. And the king, still recovering from poison, claims she's his mate?" He looked at Daemon with something like regret. "Wolfsbane can cause hallucinations, Your Majesty. We all know this. Perhaps you should shut your mouth before I freeze it shut." The words came out of Sage before she could stop them, sharp and cold as the ice still clinging to the walls. "I didn't poison anyone. I didn't ask to save him. And I sure as hell didn't ask to be anyone's mate." The temperature dropped again, responding to her anger. Frost crept across the floorboards, spreading out from where she stood like a living thing. "You see?" Marcus's voice was strained from his position against the wall, but triumphant. "She threatens the king's own guards. This is not the behaviour of an innocent woman." "No," Daemon said, and there was steel in his voice. "It's the behaviour of a woman who's been pushed too far by men who think they have the right to control her." He looked at each of his guards in turn. "Sage saved my life when she could have let me die. She fought the worst blizzard I've seen in decades to drag me to safety. She used her own power she didn't even know she had, to purge the poison from my veins. And now you stand in her home and accuse her of trying to kill me?" Kyle moved to stand beside Daemon, his storm cloud eyes hard as he looked at Garrett. "The Beta serves the Alpha King without question. If our king says this woman is his mate, then she is our Luna. End of discussion. Thank you for that ringing endorsement, Sage muttered. But some of the tension in her shoulders eased. At least Daemon's beta seemed reasonable, even if the copper-haired guard looked like he wanted to put silver cuffs on her. It's not that simple. This came from the third guard, who'd entered with Cale and Garrett, a woman with dark skin and calculating eyes. Marcus isn't wrong about the timing, even if his methods are questionable. She looked at Sage with curiosity rather than hostility. Winter wolves have been extinct for 2 centuries. If you truly are one, why would your pack not recognize it? Why call you cursed and cast you out? It was a fair question, and Sage appreciated that the woman had asked it directly instead of whispering behind her back. I don't know what a winter wolf is, she admitted. All I know is that I was supposed to shift at 18 and didn't. The pack elders examined me, said there was no wolf in me at all, that I was broken. The old pain tried to surface, but she pushed it down. They performed the rite of severing and banished me. I've been alone ever since. What pack? The woman pressed. Sage hesitated. Daemon had asked the same question earlier, and she'd refused to answer. But now, with ice still coating her fingers and strange power humming under her skin, she felt like she owed them something. Frost Peak Pack, in the Northern Territories, about 60 miles from here. Alpha Garrett Thornridge was my alpha. The copper-haired guard made a choking sound. Did you say Garrett Thornridge? You know him? Sage felt a chill that had nothing to do with her power. He's my uncle, Garrett said slowly, and he never mentioned having an Omega banished for being wolfless. In fact, I was there 3 years ago when... He stopped abruptly, his expression going carefully blank. When what? Daemon's voice was soft, but commanding. Garrett's jaw worked. When he told the pack that his daughter had died, that she'd been attacked by rogues during a run and her body was never recovered. The words hit Sage like a physical blow. I don't. She couldn't breathe suddenly. The cabin walls felt like they were closing in. He told everyone I was dead? You're Garrett Thornridge's daughter? The female guard looked stunned. But that means you're highborn, Cale finished quietly. Not just any Omega, but the daughter of an Alpha. That changes things. It changes nothing, Marcus said, and despite being frozen against the wall, he somehow managed to sound smug. It makes her story even more suspicious. An Alpha's daughter, banished and declared dead. Suddenly appearing to save the king? This reeks of a conspiracy. The only conspiracy here is yours, cousin. Daemon's voice was ice. And when we return to the capital, you'll answer for it. Will I? Marcus smiled. You seem very certain of your position, Daemon. But how many of your guards truly believe this fantasy? How many think you've been compromised by poison and a pretty face? Before Daemon could respond, the door burst open again. 4 more wolves entered, these ones with weapons drawn and bloodlust in their eyes. Sage recognized the look. She'd seen it before, in the eyes of the guards who'd escorted her to the border and told her never to return. Stand down, Kyle ordered, but the newcomers ignored him. Their eyes were locked on Marcus. We came as fast as we could, Lord Marcus, one of them said. He was massive. Even for a wolf, with scars crisscrossing his face. Where is the rogue? Right there? Marcus jerked his chin toward Sage, despite the ice holding him in place. The Omega, who poisoned the king and brought him here to finish the job. I tried to reason with her, but she attacked me with some kind of dark magic. You can see for yourselves. The temperature in the cabin was plummeting again, Sage realized. Ice was spreading faster now, climbing the walls, covering the ceiling. Her power was responding to her fear, her anger, her feeling of being trapped and cornered and betrayed all over again. This is a lie, she said, but her voice sounded distant even to her own ears. I didn't poison anyone. I'm not working with rogues. I just wanted to be left alone. Then why did you save the king? The scarred wolf demanded. He took a step toward her and Sage saw Daemon tense. What did you hope to gain? I saved him because he was dying. The words ripped out of her, raw and furious, because I'm apparently too stupid to mind my own business and let people die in the snow, even when helping them brings nothing but trouble. Seize her, Marcus ordered, as if he had any authority while frozen to the wall. But his loyalists moved anyway, spreading out to surround her. No one touches her. Daemon moved to put himself between Sage and the advancing wolves, but she could see the strain in his posture. He was still weak, still recovering. He couldn't fight off 5 wolves, not in his current state. Kyle and the female guard moved to flank him, but Garrett hung back, his hand still on his weapon, clearly torn between duty and doubt. "My king," Kale said quietly, "you need to get behind me. You're not strong enough to—" Everything happened at once. The scarred wolf lunged for Sage. Daemon roared and shifted mid-leap, his massive silver wolf form slamming into the attacker. Kyle and the female guard engaged 2 more of Marcus's loyalists, and Garrett finally made his choice, drawing his weapon and moving to guard Daemon's flank. But the 5th wolf, a wiry man with cold eyes, had circled around the chaos. Sage saw the blade in his hand, saw the silver gleam of it, saw the way he was angling for Daemon's exposed back, while the king's wolf was occupied with the scarred attacker. She didn't think, didn't plan, just moved. Sage threw herself between Daemon and the blade and felt the silver punch through her shoulder with a burst of white-hot agony. She heard Daemon's wolf howl, heard shouts and curses. But it all seemed very far away. The pain was everything, burning through her like liquid fire. Then it stopped burning. Sage looked down at the blade protruding from her shoulder and watched in stunned fascination as ice began to form around it. The silver that should have been killing her was instead crystallizing, turning to frost that spread up the blade and into her wound. The pain transformed into something else, cold, yes, but not burning, clean, pure. What? The wiry wolf still had his hand on the blade hilt, and Sage watched frost climb up his arm. "What are you?" Her eyes met his, and she saw her reflection in his widening pupils. Saw that her eyes had gone pure white, glowing like fresh snow under moonlight. "I don't know," she whispered. Then power exploded out of her. The wave of ice and freezing wind threw everyone back, friend and foe alike. It shattered windows, coated every surface in thick frost, and sent Marcus's loyalists crashing into walls. The wiry wolf who'd stabbed her was encased in ice from the chest down, his expression frozen in shock. And through it all, Sage felt something else rising inside her, something that had been dormant, sleeping, waiting for the right moment to wake. Her wolf. The shift took her by surprise. She'd imagined it 1,000 times as a girl. What it would feel like, whether it would hurt, what colour her fur would be. She'd hoped for brown, like her mother, or perhaps grey, like her father. She never imagined white, pure, pristine white that seemed to glow with its own inner light. Sage looked down at paws that were bigger than they should be, at fur that rippled with every breath. She could feel the power humming under her skin, could sense the ice responding to her will like an extension of herself. And the eyes. When she caught her reflection in the frozen window, she saw eyes like a winter storm, white and silver and glacial blue all swirling together. The cabin had gone utterly silent. Everyone was staring at her, Kale and Garrett and the female guard with expressions of shock. Daemon's silver wolf with something that might have been awe, and Marcus's loyalists with pure terror. It was Marcus who broke the silence, his voice hoarse. "Impossible. Winter wolves are extinct. They died out 200 years ago." Sage's wolf turned to look at him, and some instinct made her understand what she was, even if she didn't know the full history. Winter wolves. The original royal protectors, born to sense poison, to withstand silver, to wield ice as both weapon and shield. Her pack hadn't feared her because she was broken. They'd feared her because they didn't understand what she was. Daemon shifted back to human form, seemingly unconcerned with his nakedness as he approached her slowly. "Sage, it's all right. You're safe. You're—" He stopped a few feet away and dropped to one knee. "You're magnificent." The gesture, an Alpha King kneeling before her, should have felt wrong, but somehow it felt right, like pieces clicking into place. "Bind them," Daemon ordered, without taking his eyes off Sage. "Marcus and his conspirators are to be taken to the capital in silver chains. They'll face trial for treason and attempted regicide." Chaol and Garrett moved to obey, though Garrett kept shooting Sage looks that were equal parts wonder and fear. The female guard approached Sage carefully, her hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "Luna," she said softly, and Sage's wolf ears pricked at the title. "My name is Rhaena. I'm the king's lead tracker. That was extraordinary. I've never seen power like that." Sage wanted to respond, wanted to say something, but she didn't know how to shift back. Didn't know how to release this form that felt both foreign and more natural than her human body ever had. Daemon seemed to sense her distress. He moved closer, slowly, and reached out to touch her white fur. "Feel the shift," he murmured. "It's not about forcing your body to change. It's about choosing which form feels right in this moment. Your human form is still there, still you. Just reach for it." Sage closed her storm-coloured eyes and reached. The shift back was smoother than the first one, though it left her gasping and naked on the floor of her frozen cabin. Daemon immediately wrapped the blanket he'd been using around her shoulders, his touch gentle but proprietary. "The blade," Sage managed, touching her shoulder where the silver had pierced. There was no wound, just a faint scar that looked like frost patterns on glass. "It should have. Silver should kill us. How did I—" "Winter wolves are immune to silver," Daemon explained, helping her to her feet. "One of many gifts your bloodline possessed. You can also sense poison from great distances, heal faster than normal wolves, and wield ice as both weapon and tool." He paused. "Your pack should have recognized these signs. The fact that they didn't, or pretended not to, is inexcusable." "They were afraid," Sage said quietly, and she knew it was true, afraid of what they didn't understand. Easier to call me cursed and cast me out than to admit they had something rare and powerful in their midst. "Their loss is my gain." Daemon's hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "And their actions will have consequences." Across the cabin, Marcus laughed, a bitter, defeated sound. Kyle had released him from the ice and was binding his hands with silver chains that had the would-be assassin hissing in pain. "You think you've won, cousin? You've found yourself a winter wolf mate and believe that makes you untouchable?" "I believe," Daemon said coldly, "that attempting to murder your Alpha King is a crime punishable by death. Everything else is irrelevant." "Is it?" Marcus's pale gold eyes fixed on Sage. "The council will have questions about her, about the convenient timing of her appearance, about whether a winter wolf, a bloodline loyal to the old ways, can truly be trusted in these modern times." "The council will accept what I tell them to accept," Daemon said, but Sage caught the flicker of concern in his eyes. Marcus saw it too. Will they? Or will they see what I see? A king compromised by poison and a pretty face, making rash decisions that could endanger us all. Before Daemon could respond, Sage stepped forward. The blanket slipped slightly, but she didn't care. She was done being talked about like she wasn't in the room, done being treated like a prize to be won or a threat to be neutralized. "Here's what's going to happen," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos of the last hour. "You're going to take your traitor cousin and his loyalists back to your capital. You're going to have your trial and your justice, and I'm going to stay here in my cabin and live my life exactly as I have for the past 3 years." Daemon's expression shifted to something like panic. "Sage, you can't. We're mates. The bond doesn't give you the right to make decisions for me." She met his eyes, gold clashing with her human blue. You said so yourself, remember? That you wouldn't force me, that you'd let me choose. I did say that, Daemon admitted, and I meant it. But Sage, you're not safe here anymore. Marcus knows where you are. He has allies we haven't identified. And now that your power has manifested, I can defend myself. Sage gestured at the ice still coating every surface of her cabin. I think I've proven that. You've proven you're powerful, Kyle interjected, his voice respectful but firm. But power without training is dangerous, to yourself and others. You need guidance, Luna. Teachers who understand what you are. Don't call me that, Sage snapped. I'm not anyone's Luna. I didn't ask for this power, didn't ask to be anyone's mate, and I sure as hell didn't ask to be dragged into pack politics. The hurt that flashed across Daemon's face was almost enough to make her take the words back. Almost. I understand you're overwhelmed, he said carefully. Everything that's happened in the last day would be difficult for anyone to process. But denying the mate bond won't make it go away. And denying your heritage, your power. My heritage? Sage's laugh was sharp. My heritage is being cast out by my own father, being declared dead rather than acknowledged, living alone in the wilderness for 3 years because I was too broken for my own pack to accept. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself. Forgive me if I'm not eager to embrace some grand destiny based on bloodlines I knew nothing about until an hour ago. Silence fell over the cabin. Marcus's loyalists had been bound and were being guarded by Garrett and another wolf who'd arrived with reinforcements. Rhaena was watching Sage with sympathy in her dark eyes. Kale looked torn between duty and understanding, and Daemon looked like a man watching something precious slip through his fingers. What do you want? He asked finally. Tell me what you need, and I'll make it happen. The question was so unexpected, so genuine, that Sage actually had to think about her answer. What did she want? Safety, freedom, control over her own life. But also, and this was the part that terrified her, she wanted to understand what she was, wanted to learn how to wield this power that had been sleeping inside her all along. And if she was being completely honest with herself, she wanted to explore this bond that pulled at her every time she looked at Daemon, wanted to understand why her wolf, her newly awakened, powerful, impossible wolf, recognized him as mate with a certainty that transcended logic. But wanting something and being ready for it were two different things. I want time, Sage said finally. Time to process all of this. Time to learn about winter wolves and what I am. Time to decide if I can trust you, trust any of you, with my safety and my freedom. How much time? Daemon asked. I don't know. A week? A month? However long it takes? The council will convene in 2 weeks to hear Marcus's trial, Kyle said quietly. They'll expect the king's mate to be present. Then they'll be disappointed, Sage shot back, because I haven't agreed to be anyone's mate yet. Daemon flinched like she'd struck him, but he nodded slowly. All right, I'll give you time, but on 3 conditions. Of course there were conditions. I'm listening. First, you accept protection. I'll leave 2 of my most trusted guards here, Rhaena and 1 other of your choosing. They'll keep watch. Make sure Marcus's remaining allies don't try to finish what he started. Sage wanted to argue, but the logic was sound. She might be powerful, but she was untrained. Fine. But they stay outside. This cabin is mine. Agreed. Second condition, you let me send someone to teach you about your power. A winter wolf elder, if we can find one, or at least someone with knowledge of the old bloodlines. That actually made sense too, much as Sage hated to admit it. As long as I can refuse the lessons if I want to. Agreed. Third condition. Daemon stepped closer, and Sage felt the mate bond pull tight between them. You wear this. He reached up and unfastened something from around his neck, a pendant on a leather cord, carved from what looked like bone or stone, inscribed with symbols Sage didn't recognize. It's the King's Seal, Chaol explained when Daemon fastened it around Sage's neck. It marks you as under the Alpha King's personal protection. Anyone who harms you answers to him directly. It's also a beacon, Daemon added. If you're in danger, real danger, break it. I'll feel it and I'll come, no matter where I am or what I'm doing. Sage looked down at the pendant resting against her chest. It was warm, almost pulsing with Daemon's power. Wearing it felt like acceptance, like a claim she wasn't ready to acknowledge. But it also felt like safety, like having someone who would come when she called, no questions asked. "All right," she said quietly. "Your 3 conditions. I accept." Relief washed over Daemon's face. He reached up like he might touch her, then seemed to think better of it. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Sage warned. "I might still decide to reject the bond and stay in my cabin for the rest of my life." "You won't." Daemon's smile was small but genuine. "Because you're curious now, about your power, about what you are, about us." He took a step back, giving her space, and once a winter wolf's curiosity is awakened, nothing can stop them from seeking answers. Before Sage could ask how he knew that, Chaol cleared his throat. "My king, we should move out. The longer we wait, the more time Marcus's allies have to prepare a defense." Daemon nodded, but didn't take his eyes off Sage. "I'll send someone within the week, someone you can trust to teach you. And Sage?" He waited until she met his gaze. "I know you didn't choose this, any of this, but I promise you I will never take your choices from you. The mate bond is real, but accepting it has to be your decision. I'll wait as long as it takes." Then he turned and began issuing orders to his guards. Marcus and his loyalists were hauled to their feet and escorted out into the snow, which had finally stopped falling. Rhaena approached Sage with a respectful bow. "I'll set up a perimeter, Luna. You won't even know I'm here." "Sage," she corrected. "Just Sage." Rhaena smiled. "As you wish, Just Sage." One by one, the wolves filed out of her cabin until only Daemon remained. He'd shifted back to his wolf form, that magnificent silver beast with golden eyes, and was watching her with an intensity that made her heart race. "Go," Sage told him, pulling the blanket tighter. "Your pack needs you." The silver wolf approached slowly and pressed his massive head against her hand. Sage felt the mate bond sing at the contact, felt her newly awakened wolf rise up in response. Then he was gone, disappearing into the snow with his guards and prisoners. Sage stood in the doorway of her ice-covered cabin, watching until they vanished into the tree line. Only then did she allow herself to slide down the doorframe, her legs finally giving out. A winter wolf, an Alpha King's mate, a woman who could freeze a room with a thought and shift into a form she'd been told would never exist. "What the hell just happened?" she asked the empty air. From the trees beyond her clearing, someone else was asking the same question. The woman had been watching since the guards arrived, hidden by snow and shadow and old magic. She'd seen everything. The fight, the revelation, the mate bond declaration. And she'd seen something the others had missed. When Sage's power had exploded outward, when the ice had coated everything and everyone. There had been a moment, just a heartbeat, when symbols had appeared in the frost. Old symbols, forbidden symbols, the kind that marked not just a winter wolf, but something far more dangerous. The woman's eyes, storm-coloured and ancient, exactly like Sage's wolf form, narrowed thoughtfully. "So," she murmured to herself, her breath misting in the cold air. "The last daughter finally awakens. This changes everything." She melted back into the shadows, already planning. The Alpha King thought he'd found his mate and his kingdom's salvation. He had no idea what he'd actually unleashed. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Thank you. Chapter 4. Sage ran until her lungs burned and her legs trembled, until the cabin was far behind her and the forest had become a blur of white and grey. Her wolf form cut through the snow effortlessly, powerful muscles propelling her forward with a grace she'd never experienced in her human body. The pendant Damon had given her thumped against her chest with each stride, a constant reminder of the choice she was running from. She didn't know where she was going, didn't care. She just needed to move, to escape the suffocating weight of destiny and mate bonds and ancient bloodlines she'd known nothing about until hours ago. The sun was setting, painting the snow in shades of rose and gold when exhaustion finally caught up with her. Sage's wolf stumbled, her paw catching on a hidden root, and she went down hard. The shift back to human happened involuntarily, leaving her naked and shivering in a snowdrift. "Stupid," she gasped, her breath misting in the frigid air. "Stupid, stupid, stupid." Running off with no plan, no clothes, no idea what you're doing? A voice finished for her. Sage's head snapped up. A woman stood at the edge of the clearing, so still she might have been part of the forest itself. She was ancient, not in the way she looked, but in the weight of years that hung around her like a cloak. Her hair was white as fresh snow, braided down her back, and her eyes were exactly like Sage's wolf form, storm-coloured, shifting between white and silver and glacial blue. "Who are you?" Sage demanded, trying to cover herself with her arms even as frost began forming on her skin in response to her fear. "My name is Freya." The woman moved forward with fluid grace, shrugging off a fur cloak and draping it around Sage's shoulders. "And I've been looking for you for a very long time, Sage Thornridge, though I see you've finally found yourself." Sage pulled the cloak tight, grateful for the warmth even as suspicion coiled in her gut. "How do you know my name? How did you find me?" "I felt you wake." Freya settled onto a fallen log, gesturing for Sage to sit beside her. "All winter wolves can sense when one of our own manifests for the first time. Your power sang through the forest like a bell, impossible to miss." She smiled, and there was sadness in it. "I'd almost given up hope that you'd ever break free of the binding." The world seemed to tilt sideways. "The what?" "The binding ritual." Freya's expression hardened. "The ancient magic your father used to suppress your wolf, to lock away your power so completely that even you believed you were broken." She reached out and touched Sage's shoulder where the silver blade had pierced her. "But you were never broken, child. You were caged." Sage felt like she couldn't breathe. "My father? No, he wouldn't. He loved me. Before I failed to shift, he loved me." "Did he?" Freya's voice was gentle but relentless. "Or did he love the daughter he thought he had? The ordinary wolf who would never threaten his authority, never question his decisions, never be more powerful than he was?" "Stop!" Sage pushed to her feet, the cloak sliding from her shoulders. Frost spread across the ground where she stood. "You don't know anything about my family." "About what happened?" "I know everything about what happened." Freya stood as well, and power radiated from her in waves that made Sage's newly awakened wolf whimper in recognition. "I know that 16 years ago, a baby girl was born under the winter moon with eyes that flashed white when she cried. I know that the pack healer recognized the signs immediately and brought them to your father. And I know that instead of celebrating the miracle of a winter wolf born to his pack, Garrett Thornridge panicked. Why would he panic? But even as Sage asked the question, pieces were clicking into place. Things she'd overlooked, dismissed, forgotten. Because 2 months before your birth, a man came to Frost Peak Pack with an offer. Freya began to pace, her boots leaving no prints in the snow. His name was Marcus Shadowmere, and he was building alliances, gathering packs who were uncomfortable with the direction the Alpha King was taking. Damon Shadowmere was young then, newly crowned, and he had radical ideas. Equal rights for Omegas, fair treatment for lone wolves, accountability for alphas who abused their power. Sage's stomach dropped. Marcus paid my father to suppress my wolf. Not just suppress it, bind it completely so thoroughly that you'd never manifest. Because if a winter wolf emerged in the Northern Territories, if word spread that the ancient protectors were returning, it would undermine everything Marcus was building. Freya stopped pacing and faced Sage directly. Winter wolves are the natural checks and balances on alpha authority. We can sense lies, detect poison, resist alpha commands. We're born to serve and protect true leaders, but we're also born to destroy tyrants. The clearing was so silent that Sage could hear her own heartbeat, could hear the whisper of snow falling from pine branches. "How much?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "How much did Marcus pay my father to destroy his own daughter's future?" "Enough to expand Frost Peak's territory by 1/3. Enough to guarantee favourable trade agreements for 20 years. Enough to make Garrett Thornridge one of the wealthiest alphas in the Northern Territories." Freya's expression was carved from ice, and all he had to do was perform an ancient ritual on his infant daughter and lie to her for 18 years. Sage sank back down onto the log, her legs unable to hold her anymore. The ritual. When I turned 18 and didn't shift, they said they were examining me, looking for the wolf that should have been there. But that wasn't what they were doing, was it? No, they were reinforcing the binding, making it even stronger, because you were getting older, more powerful, and the cage was starting to crack. Freya sat beside her, close but not touching. But bindings have a weakness. They can't withstand true acts of will, true selflessness. When you chose to save Damon, when you fought a blizzard to drag a dying wolf to safety, expecting nothing in return, the binding shattered. Your wolf, your power, your true self, it all came flooding back. Sage pressed her hands to her face, trying to process everything. Her father had sold her out before she could even walk. Her entire pack had lied to her, participated in the suppression of her power, then cast her out when the binding couldn't hold any more. They'd called her cursed to hide their own corruption. "I hate him," she said, and frost spread across the log beneath her, climbing up the nearby trees. "I hate all of them. They took everything from me, my childhood, my pack, my identity. They made me believe I was broken for 3 years. 3 years of living alone, thinking I was wrong somehow, defective. But you survived." Freya's hand settled on Sage's shoulder, warm despite the cold radiating from the younger woman. "You survived alone in these mountains with no wolf, no pack, no support. Do you know how rare that is? Most wolves who are severed from their pack die within months. They can't bear the isolation, the loss of connection. But you built a life. You became strong and self-sufficient and capable. The binding couldn't take that from you." Sage wiped at her eyes, frustrated to find them wet. "What good is surviving if I don't even know who I am?" "Then let me tell you." Freya's voice took on the cadence of a storyteller, ancient and rhythmic. 200 years ago, winter wolves were the royal protectors. We served the alpha kings and queens, guarded them from poison and treachery, helped them rule with wisdom and justice. But some alphas grew to resent our power. They wanted to rule absolutely, without oversight, without limits, so they began to hunt us. The older woman's eyes grew distant, seeing things Sage could only imagine. It started slowly. Accidents, disappearances, winter wolves dying in suspicious circumstances. By the time we realized it was a coordinated effort, it was too late. Entire families were slaughtered. The survivors scattered, went into hiding, suppressed their powers to avoid detection. Within a generation, most wolves believed we were extinct. But we weren't, Sage said quietly. No. We went underground. Had children with ordinary wolves, diluting the bloodline, hoping to hide in plain sight. Most winter wolf descendants never manifested. The power became dormant, sleeping. But every few generations, a true winter wolf would be born. Someone with the pure bloodline, the full power. Freya's storm-coloured eyes locked on Sage's human blue ones. Someone like you? The weight of those words settled over Sage like a physical thing. How many are left? How many winter wolves are still alive? Including you and me? 7 that I know of. Maybe a dozen more in hiding, too afraid to reveal themselves. Freya's expression was grave. We're a dying breed, Sage. And you might be the last hope we have for survival. No. Sage stood abruptly, shaking her head. No, I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be anyone's hope or salvation or— Neither did I, Freya interrupted. Neither did any of us. But we don't get to choose our bloodline, child. We only get to choose what we do with it. Before Sage could respond, a howl split the air, long and mournful and full of warning. Freya's head snapped up, her entire body going tense. What is it? Sage asked, her newly awakened instincts screaming danger. Rayna. Freya was already moving, shifting mid-stride into a wolf form that was larger than Sage's, with fur as white as her hair. The guard Daemon left to protect you. She's calling for help. Sage shifted and ran after her, the 2 white wolves streaking through the forest like ghosts. They found Rayna in wolf form, circling the perimeter of Sage's cabin. The tracker was limping, blood staining her dark fur, and her eyes were wild with pain and fury. Freya shifted back first. What happened? Rayna's shift was slower, hindered by her injuries. When she spoke, her voice was strained. Ambush. 6 wolves, well-trained, coordinated. They came at sunset, took out the other guard immediately. I managed to fight them off, but— She swayed, and Sage caught her before she could fall. But what? Sage demanded, helping Rayna sit against a tree. They weren't trying to kill me. They were trying to kill you. Rayna looked at Sage with something like awe despite her pain. They kept asking where you were, where the cursed Omega had run to. When I wouldn't tell them, they left a message. She gestured toward the cabin. And Sage felt her blood run cold. The door was painted with words in what looked like blood. The winter bitch dies, or the king does. Choose. When did they leave? Freya's voice was sharp as broken glass. Maybe an hour ago. They headed south toward the capital. Rayna coughed, and Sage saw more blood. I tried to follow, but— You did well. Freya was already examining Rayna's wounds with practiced efficiency. The injuries are serious, but not fatal. Sage, I need you to go inside and get bandages, clean water, anything we can use to treat her. Sage wanted to argue, wanted to demand more answers, but Rayna's laboured breathing made her move. She pushed open the cabin door and stopped dead. The interior had been ransacked. Her meagre possessions were destroyed, her furniture overturned, her walls covered in more bloody messages. But it was what sat on her small table that made her stomach turn. A silver crown, intricately carved and beautiful, and beside it, a note written in elegant script. For the last Winter Queen. You have a choice to make. Wear this crown and watch your mate die, or hide like a coward while the kingdom burns. Either way, the old order returns. The conspiracy sends its regards. Sage's hands were shaking as she picked up the note. The conspiracy. The group of alpha families who wanted to overthrow Daemon, who'd paid Marcus to poison the king, who'd paid her father to suppress her power. They knew. They knew everything. What she was, who she was meant to be, and exactly how to destroy her. She grabbed supplies for Rayna and ran back outside. Freya had shifted to her wolf form and was using some kind of healing magic, frost forming over Rayna's wounds, sealing them with ice that glowed faintly in the gathering darkness. They know about the bloodline, Sage said, showing Freya the note. They know I'm— what did they call it? The last Winter Queen? Freya's shift back was instant. She read the note, and something like fear crossed her ancient face. This is worse than I thought. Worse how? Sage demanded. There's something I haven't told you yet. Something about your specific heritage. Freya handed the note back. You're not just any winter wolf, Sage. You're the last direct descendant of Aeria Frostborn, the final Winter Wolf Queen. She died 200 years ago defending the Alpha King from an assassination attempt, and with her death, the royal line was thought to be broken. But clearly, someone in your ancestry carried her blood forward. Sage felt dizzy. What does that mean? It means your power is exponentially greater than any Winter Wolf born in the last 2 centuries. It means if you fully accept your heritage, if you complete the mate bond with Daemon, you could restore the ancient balance between Winter Wolves and Alpha Kings. You could bring back the protections that kept tyrants from power. Freya paused, and her expression was grave. But it also means you inherit the ancient compact. The what? The Winter Wolf Queens were bonded to their Alpha Kings in a way that went deeper than normal mate bonds. Their lives were intertwined, their powers amplified by each other. Together, they were nearly invincible. Freya's voice dropped. But if one died, so did the other. The bond was that complete. The world seemed to stop. Sage heard the words, understood them, but couldn't quite process the implications. You're saying, if I accept Daemon as my mate, if I become this Winter Queen and he dies. She couldn't finish the sentence. You die with him, Freya confirmed, and vice versa. It's the price of that level of power, that depth of connection. You don't just protect your Alpha King, you become part of him, and he becomes part of you. Sage looked down at the pendant around her neck, at the king's seal that marked her as Daemon's. And if I don't accept it? If I refuse the bond, refuse this destiny? Then you live, you survive, you remain powerful but alone, and Daemon faces the conspiracy without his greatest weapon. Freya's expression was sympathetic. But the kingdom will likely fall. Without a Winterwolf Luna, without the ancient protections, the corrupt Alphas will eventually overwhelm Daemon's forces. They have numbers, resources, and generations of planning on their side. It wasn't a choice at all. It was a trap. Accept the bond and tie her life to Daemon's, knowing that his death would mean hers. Or refuse and watch a good king, a king who'd shown her kindness and respect and patience, be destroyed by the same kind of corrupt Alphas who'd ruined her life. There has to be another option, Sage said desperately. Some other way to... Another howl cut through the night, and this one made Sage's blood run cold. It wasn't a warning or a call for help. It was a war cry. Freya's expression went hard as stone. It started. What started? The attack on the capital. The conspiracy isn't waiting for you to make your choice. They're forcing your hand. Freya grabbed Sage's shoulders. Listen to me carefully. What you choose in the next few minutes will determine the fate of every wolf in North America. If you run, if you hide, Daemon will fight alone and probably die. His kingdom will fall, and wolves like Marcus will take power. The old ways will return. Omegas enslaved, winter wolves hunted to extinction, tyrants ruling without oversight. And if I fight? Sage already knew the answer. If you fight, if you stand with Daemon, you might save him. Save the kingdom, but you'll be bound to him forever. His victories will be yours, his defeats will be yours, and his death. Freya's grip tightened. His death will be yours too. Rhaena, healed enough to speak, looked up at Sage with fierce determination. He's a good king, the best we've had in generations. He treats Omegas like equals, punishes Alphas who abuse their power, actually listens to his people. If he falls, everything he's built falls with him. I know. Sage did know. She'd seen it in the way Daemon had spoken to her, the way he'd asked rather than commanded, the way he'd promised to let her choose even when it would have been easier to simply take what he wanted. He was good. He was worthy. He was everything an Alpha King should be. And he was about to die if she didn't do something. Sage looked at the cabin, her sanctuary for 3 years, the place she'd built from nothing, the symbol of her hard-won independence. Then she looked south, toward the capital, toward the king who'd called her his mate and meant it. Freedom or duty, survival or sacrifice. Herself, or something larger than herself? How far is the capital? She asked. 40 miles, Freya said. Even running full speed in wolf form, it would take hours to get there. The battle will be over by then. Then we don't run. Sage met Freya's storm-coloured eyes with her own human blue ones. You said winter wolves can do things other wolves can't. Can we travel faster? Through ice or snow or... Understanding dawned on Freya's face. The frost paths. I haven't used them in decades. Wasn't sure if you'd be strong enough, but... She looked at Sage with new respect. Yes, if we combine our power, we might be able to create a path that will take us directly to the capital. But it's dangerous, Sage. You're untrained, and the frost paths require absolute control. If you lose focus, if the ice breaks, we die, Sage finished. I'm getting used to that being the consequence for everything. She pulled Freya's cloak tighter around herself. Teach me, quickly. What followed was the most intense 10 minutes of Sage's life. Freya explained the basics, how winter wolves could create pathways through the winter itself, sliding between moments of frost and cold, travelling vast distances in heartbeats. It required visualising your destination, pouring your power into the space between, and having absolute faith that the ice would hold. One more thing, Freya said as they prepared to shift. Once you reach the capital, once you see Daemon in battle, the mate bond will pull at you. It will demand completion. You'll feel it in every cell, every instinct screaming at you to accept him, to bind yourself to him completely. Can I resist it? Sage asked. You can try. But if he's dying, if you watch him fall and know you could have saved him. Freya's expression was sad. The bond doesn't give you much choice in those circumstances. Your wolf will act to save your mate, even if your human mind isn't ready. Sage touched the pendant at her throat. Then I guess I better decide before it comes to that. They shifted. 2 white wolves with storm-coloured eyes, standing side by side in the snow. Sage felt Freya's power reach out, felt it connect with her own, and together they began to weave. Frost spread from their paws, creating patterns in the snow that glowed with inner light. The temperature dropped so fast that Rayna gasped, her breath freezing instantly. The patterns grew, expanded, until they formed a path that led somewhere else, somewhere that wasn't quite here, wasn't quite now. Ready? Freya's voice in her mind was clear as bells. Sage thought of Daemon, his golden eyes, the way he'd knelt before her wolf, the promise he'd made to let her choose. Ready, she confirmed. They stepped onto the frost path, and the world fell away. It was like running through a dream. The forest around them blurred, time and space compressing in ways that made no sense. Sage could feel Freya's power guiding them, keeping the path stable, but she poured her own strength into it as well. Ice and snow responded to her will, creating a tunnel of winter that they raced through at impossible speeds. And then suddenly, they were standing on a ridge overlooking a valley. Below them, the Alpha King's capital burned. Wolves in human and animal form clashed in brutal combat. Sage could see Daemon's silver form in the centre of the battle, could see Kale and Garrett and other guards fighting desperately against overwhelming numbers. The conspiracy had brought an army, hundreds of wolves, all wearing the colours of the old Alpha families, all determined to crush Daemon's reign and return to the old ways. As Sage watched, 3 massive wolves converged on Daemon. She saw him fight, saw him take down one attacker, wound another. But there were too many. His movements were slowing. Blood matted his silver fur. He was losing. And in that moment, Sage felt the mate bond snap tight like a physical cord. Her wolf surged forward, roaring with fury and protectiveness, and something that felt like love, even though she barely knew this man. Mine, her wolf snarled. Ours, protect, save, fight. Freya shifted beside her. This is your choice, Sage Thornridge. Last daughter of the Winterwolf Queens. Last hope of the ancient bloodline. The elder's voice was solemn, Hide and live as you have, free and alone, or fight and bind yourself to a king, a kingdom, a destiny you never asked for. Sage watched Daemon take another hit, watched him stumble, watched the conspirators close in for the kill. Her father had taken her choice once, binding her power to keep her weak and controllable. She'd be damned if she let anyone take her choice again. Sage threw back her head and howled, a sound that shattered the air like breaking glass. Power exploded from her, and frost spread across the valley in a wave of white and silver. Every wolf, friend and foe alike, stopped fighting and turned to stare at the ridge, at the two white wolves standing there, glowing with ancient power, at Sage, who'd finally made her choice. She leapt from the ridge and let the winter carry her down to war. Chapter 5. The throne room fell silent as Sage walked through the massive doors, frost spreading in her wake like a living thing. She'd shifted back to human form, and someone, probably Freya, had provided her with clothing, a simple white dress that somehow seemed regal despite its plainness. Her hair hung loose down her back, still carrying traces of snow, and her eyes blazed with purpose. Every wolf in the room turned to stare, the injured guards being tended by healers, the council members who'd been debating battle strategies, Kyle, standing at attention despite the blood staining his uniform, and Daemon, seated on a throne carved from ancient oak, looking every inch the Alpha King, even with exhaustion etched into his features. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and Sage felt the mate bond pull so hard that it actually hurt. "Clear the room." Daemon's voice was rough, strained. "Now." "But Your Majesty," one of the council members protested, "we haven't finished discussing the now." The command was absolute, and wolves scrambled to obey. Within moments, only Sage, Daemon, and Kale remained. The beta looked between them, seemed to realize his presence wasn't required, and bowed out as well. The doors closed with a heavy thud. "You came back," Daemon said, and there was a wonder in his voice. He started to stand, then seemed to think better of it. "I didn't think, after everything that happened, I thought." "I know what you thought." Sage walked closer, her bare feet silent on the stone floor. With each step, frost patterns appeared beneath her soles, beautiful and intricate. "You thought I'd run, hide, save myself, and let you face this alone. I wouldn't have blamed you." Daemon's golden eyes tracked her movement, like he was afraid she might disappear if he looked away. "The bond between us, it's not your fault. You didn't ask for it, didn't choose it, and the cost of accepting it is my life tied to yours," Sage finished. She stopped at the base of the throne, tilted her head back to look at him. "I know." Freya explained everything, the ancient compact, the Winter Queen bloodline, all of it. She told me that if I accept you, complete the mate bond, and you die, I die with you. Something that might have been pain crossed Daemon's face. "Then you understand why I can't ask you to. Good thing you're not asking then." Sage climbed the steps to the throne, and Daemon's breath caught as she came to stand directly in front of him. "Because I don't need you to claim me, Daemon Shadowmere. I'm choosing you. There's a difference." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Sage saw the exact moment Daemon understood what she was offering. Not submission, not obligation, but partnership, choice, power freely given rather than taken. Sage. Her name was a prayer on his lips. "You don't have to do this. We can find another way to." "There is no other way." She reached out and cupped his face in her hands, feeling the mate bond sing at the contact. "I've spent 3 years living for no one but myself, building walls, keeping everyone out, surviving alone because I thought that was strength. But you know what I learned tonight? What? That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone in, trust someone, fight for something bigger than yourself." Sage's thumb traced the line of his jaw. "You're a good king, Daemon, the kind of king who kneels before a wolfless Omega instead of commanding her, the kind who promises to wait forever rather than force a choice, the kind worth fighting for, and worth dying for? His voice was barely a whisper, and worth living for. Sage leaned in close, her lips almost touching his. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to accept this bond, complete the lunar ceremony, and then we're going to go out there and show those conspiracy bastards exactly why winter wolves and alpha kings used to rule together. But understand this, I'm not doing this because destiny demands it. I'm doing it because I choose you, me, Sage, not my wolf, not my bloodline, not some ancient compact, just me. Daemon surged up from the throne and kissed her. It was nothing like Sage had imagined a first kiss would be. It was desperate and fierce and tasted like blood and snow and destiny. The mate bond exploded between them, power flooding through their connection so strongly that Sage gasped against his mouth. Frost and heat spiraled together, ice and fire intertwining until she couldn't tell where she ended and Daemon began. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sage could feel it, the bond settling into place like the final piece of a puzzle she hadn't known was incomplete. Her wolf rose up inside her, no longer a separate entity, but part of her, integrated and whole. And through the bond, she could feel Daemon's wolf as well, could sense his strength and his pain and his absolute, unwavering devotion. The ceremony, Daemon managed, his forehead resting against hers. We need to complete it properly, before witnesses, so the bond is recognized by pack law. Then let's make it quick. Sage pulled back, straightening the simple white dress. Because I have a feeling we don't have much time before your uninvited guests arrive. As if summoned by her words, a howl split the night, long and threatening and close. Too close. Daemon's expression hardened. He moved to the window and looked out over his territory. What he saw made his jaw clench. They're here. At least 4 alpha families, maybe more. Hundreds of wolves, all armed with silver and wolfsbane. He turned back to Sage. This is your last chance to walk away. Once we complete the ceremony, once you stand with me against them, I'm not walking away. Sage joined him at the window, looking down at the army gathering at the gates. Fear tried to claw its way up her throat, but she pushed it down. Call your witnesses, do the ceremony, then let's go show them what happens when you threaten a winter wolf's mate. The lunar ceremony was nothing like Sage had imagined. No elaborate rituals, no grand speeches. Just Daemon calling in Chaol and 3 senior council members to bear witness as he and Sage faced each other in the throne room. Do you, Sage Thornridge, accept Daemon Shadowmere as your alpha, your mate, your bonded partner? Chaol's voice was formal but warm. Do you pledge to stand with him, fight beside him, and share his burdens as Luna of this pack? Sage looked into Daemon's golden eyes and felt the bond humming between them, waiting to be fully sealed. I accept him, not as my alpha, as my equal partner. I pledge to stand with him, fight beside him, and share both his burdens and his victories as Luna of this pack. Chaol's eyebrows rose slightly at her modification of the traditional words, but he nodded. And do you, Daemon Shadowmere, accept Sage Thornridge as your Luna, your mate, your bonded partner? Do you pledge to honour her choices, respect her strength, and rule beside her as equal rather than above her? I accept her. Daemon's voice was steady, sure. I pledge to honour her choices, respect her strength, and rule beside her as equal. She is my Luna, my mate, my partner in all things. Then by the power vested in me as beta of this pack, I declare you bonded. Chaol stepped back. May the moon goddess witness and bless this union. The moment the words left his mouth, power exploded through Sage. It was like the moment when she'd first shifted, but 1,000 times stronger. She felt the ancient compact activate, felt the Winter Queen bloodline surge to life in her veins. Her eyes flashed white, and frost spread across the entire throne room in a wave of crystalline beauty. But this time, It didn't feel out of control. This time Sage could sense every molecule of ice, could direct the frost with precision and purpose. And through the bond, she could feel Daemon's power as well, raw alpha strength and authority that complemented her winter magic perfectly. Together, they were devastating. A guard burst through the doors, breathing hard. "Your Majesty, they're breaching the gates. We need to—" He stopped, staring at Sage, at the way her eyes glowed white, the way frost formed intricate patterns in the air around her, the way she stood beside Daemon, radiating ancient power. "Luna," he breathed, dropping to one knee. "How many?" Daemon's voice was calm, controlled. "At least 300. Led by Marcus. He's alive, Your Majesty. He escaped during transport to the capital, killed his guards. He's leading the attack himself." Sage felt Daemon's rage through the bond, felt it mix with her own cold fury. "Then let's go greet our guests." The battle that followed would be talked about in wolf packs for generations to come. Sage and Daemon emerged from the throne room side by side, and the effect on their defenders was immediate. Wolves who'd been wavering, who'd been considering surrender in the face of overwhelming odds, suddenly stood taller. The Luna had come. The Winter Wolf had chosen their king. The ancient protectors had returned. The conspirators' forces had breached the outer gates and were flooding into the courtyard. Sage could see Marcus at their head, his pale gold eyes blazing with madness and hatred. Behind him were alphas she didn't recognize, their packs bearing the colours of the old families who'd ruled before Daemon's reforms. And there, near the back, she spotted a familiar figure, grey hair, proud bearing. Her father. Garrett Thornridge had come to watch her die. "Last chance to surrender," Marcus called out, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "Give up your throne, Daemon, accept exile, and we'll let your cursed mate live. Might even find a use for her in the New Order." "The New Order?" Daemon's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "You mean the old tyranny, alphas ruling without oversight, omegas enslaved, winter wolves hunted to extinction." He shifted into his massive silver wolf form, and his voice echoed through the bond so all could hear. "I think not." Sage shifted as well, her white wolf form glowing in the darkness. Through the bond, she felt Daemon's battle strategy forming, felt his trust in her to handle the threats he couldn't reach. They didn't need to speak aloud. They moved as one entity, two halves of a devastating whole. The conspirators attacked in a coordinated wave, but Sage was ready. She reached out with her power and felt the winter respond. The silver weapons the attackers carried, meant to burn and weaken, froze in their hands. Wolves who'd been poisoned with wolfsbane found the toxins purged from their systems by waves of purifying ice. And those loyal to Daemon felt strength flood through them, the ancient magic of the Lunabond, empowering every member of the pack who stood with their king. Sage fought like something out of legend. Her claws left trails of frost. Her bite froze blood in veins. Wolves who thought they could overpower her with numbers found themselves trapped in ice, encased in crystalline prisons that held them without killing them. Because even in battle, even with rage singing through her veins, Sage held onto her humanity. These were misguided wolves, not monsters. They could be redeemed. Most of them anyway. Marcus proved he was beyond redemption when he tried to reach Daemon through the chaos. Sage saw him slip through the melee, saw the poisoned blade in his hand, the same mixture of silver and wolfsbane that had nearly killed Daemon before. She moved to intercept, but Marcus had planned for that. "Garrett," he shouted, "now!" And Sage's father, the alpha who'd called her cursed, who'd taken money to suppress her powers, who'd declared her dead rather than acknowledge what she was, stepped forward with a blade of his own. Sage's wolf skidded to a halt, shock freezing her in place. Through the bond, she felt Daemon's alarm, felt him trying to reach her, but he was too far away, engaged with too many opponents. "I'm sorry," Garrett said, and there might have been genuine regret in his voice. You were never supposed to survive the binding. It should have killed you in childhood. But you were always so strong, so stubborn. He raised the blade. Just like your mother. The mention of her mother, dead since Sage was 5, a loss she'd never fully processed, snapped something inside her. Rage flooded through the mate bond, and Sage felt Daemon's power join with hers. Together, they were unstoppable. Frost exploded from Sage in a wave that knocked Garrett back and froze Marcus mid-lunge. The temperature in the courtyard dropped so fast that Wolves' breath turned to ice crystals. Sage shifted to human form, standing naked and furious in the center of the battlefield, her white eyes blazing. "You took everything from me," she said, her voice carrying despite its softness. "My childhood, my pack, my identity. You sold me out before I could even walk, took money to suppress my power, then cast me out when you couldn't control me anymore." Garrett struggled to his knees, the blade fallen from his frozen hand. "The money. It saved the pack, expanded our territory, made us strong. It made you a traitor." Sage walked toward him, frost spreading in her wake. Around them, the battle had stopped. Everyone was watching, conspirators and loyalists alike. "You betrayed your own daughter, your own blood, for silver and land and the approval of tyrants." "What else could I do?" Garrett's voice rose, defensive. "You were a winter wolf? Do you know what that meant? If word spread, if other packs found out, we'd have been targets. Marcus would have destroyed us. I was protecting the pack. By destroying me." Sage stopped in front of him, and her power made the air around them shimmer with cold. "I was 18 years old, alone, terrified, convinced I was broken because my own father told me I was. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" She could kill him. The power was there, ready to be used. One thought, and she could freeze his heart, turn his blood to ice, end the man who'd caused her so much pain. Through the bond, she felt Daemon watching, waiting, trusting her to make the right choice. And Sage realized she already knew what that choice was. "I could kill you," she said quietly, "freeze you where you stand, make you feel every bit of pain you caused me. The old laws would support it. You committed treason against your Alpha King by working with Marcus. You assaulted the Luna. Execution would be justified." Garrett's face paled. "Sage, please." "But I'm not going to." She stepped back, and her eyes shifted from white to their normal blue. "Because I'm not like you. I don't destroy people just because they're inconvenient or frightening or different." She looked at Daemon, who'd made his way through the crowd to stand beside her. "What's the punishment for an alpha who betrays his own pack?" "Stripping of title and exile," Daemon said. "The same punishment your pack gave you." Sage turned back to her father. "Then that's what you get. You wanted me to know how you felt, how you suffered? Now you will. Garrett Thornridge, I strip you of your alpha title. You're banned from Frost Peak territory and from this kingdom. You'll live alone, without pack, without power, without the support system you took from me. Maybe then you'll understand what you did." The judgment echoed across the courtyard. Some of the conspirators looked relieved. If the Luna was showing mercy, perhaps they'd receive it too. Others looked furious that she hadn't executed Garrett on the spot. Marcus was in the latter category. "Weak," he snarled, breaking free from the ice that had held him. "You're just as weak as Daemon. This is why the old ways must return. Leaders who are strong enough to do what's necessary." He lunged for Sage with the poisoned blade, but he never got close. Daemon's wolf form slammed into him mid-leap, and they went down in a tangle of silver fur and violence. The fight was brutal and short. Marcus was strong, well-trained, and desperate. But Daemon was the Alpha King, empowered by the Luna Bond, fighting to protect his mate. It ended with Daemon's jaws at Marcus's throat. "Wait." Sage's voice cut through the bloodlust. Daemon's wolf looked at her, golden eyes questioning. Through the bond, she felt his desire to end this threat permanently. But she also felt his willingness to listen to her counsel. Give him a chance to surrender, she said. Give him the choice you gave me, die fighting or accept judgment. For a long moment, Marcus just laughed. Blood bubbled from his lips where Daemon's claws had torn flesh. You think I'd beg for mercy? Beg to submit to your weak, reform-minded rule? I'd rather die. Then die knowing you failed. Sage's voice was ice. That your conspiracy crumbled, that the winter wolves have returned, that the old tyranny you fought to restore is dead. Something shifted in Marcus's expression, rage giving way to realization, then to despair. The winter wolves, he whispered. You've doomed us all. They'll never stop, never submit. They'll hunt my family, punish my allies. We'll offer them justice, Daemon corrected, his voice rumbling from his wolf form. The same justice we offer everyone. Submit to fair rule or face exile. Attack the kingdom and face execution. It's simple. Fair rule. Marcus's laugh turned into a cough. There's no such thing. There's only power and those strong enough to wield it. You'll learn that, Luna. When your mate's reforms crumble, when the packs turn on you, when you realize that kindness is just another word for weakness. Daemon's jaws closed and Marcus Shadowmere spoke no more. The execution was swift and clean. Daemon shifted back to human form, standing over his cousin's body with blood on his hands and sorrow in his eyes. Through the bond, Sage felt his pain. Marcus had been family once, had been trusted, had been loved. Killing him was necessary, but not easy. She went to him and took his bloodied hands in hers. You gave him a choice. He made it. His death is on him, not you. I know. Daemon pulled her close, and Sage felt the bond pulse with shared grief and shared strength. But knowing doesn't make it hurt less. No, Sage agreed, but we'll carry it together. That's what the bond means. Around them, the conspirators' forces were surrendering. Kyle and the other guards were disarming them, sorting those who'd been coerced from those who'd joined willingly. The battle was over. They'd won. But the war for the kingdom's future was just beginning. The next few months were a whirlwind of change. The conspiracy families were given Daemon's promised choice: submit to his rule and accept reform, or face exile from the kingdom. Most chose submission, their leaders replaced by younger wolves who'd grown tired of the old ways. A few refused and were escorted to the borders, their territories redistributed among loyal packs. Sage threw herself into her new role as Luna with the same determination she'd once used to survive alone in the wilderness. But she did it on her terms. Her first act was establishing new laws protecting Omegas. No longer could they be forced into matings or treated as property. They had the right to refuse alpha commands if those commands violated their autonomy. They could challenge for higher ranks, own property, lead packs. The old guard called it radical. Sage called it basic decency. Her second act was creating a sanctuary for wolves with unusual abilities. Wolves like her, who'd been called cursed or broken because they didn't fit the standard mold. Freya helped her locate other winter wolves who'd been in hiding, and slowly, carefully, they began training a new generation in the old ways. And her third act was personally finding every wolf who'd been involved in her suppression and holding them accountable. Not with execution or violence, but with exposure. Their crimes were made public, their corruption laid bare. Some faced exile, some faced demotion. All faced the judgment of their peers. Garrett Thornridge was last seen working as a lone wolf on the outskirts of the Western Territories, surviving alone just as Sage once had. She heard reports occasionally that he was struggling, that he'd tried to join new packs but been rejected, that exile was slowly breaking him. She felt no satisfaction in his suffering, just a quiet sort of justice. Through it all, Daemon stood beside her, not above her, not controlling her, but as the partner he'd promised to be. They ruled together, their powers complementing each other perfectly, his strength and her precision, his authority and her wisdom, his fire and her ice. And the bond between them deepened with each passing day. 6 months after the battle, Sage woke to find Daemon already dressed and standing by the window of their chambers. She could feel something different through the bond, anticipation mixed with nervousness. "What is it?" she asked, joining him. Her hand unconsciously went to her stomach, where new life was just beginning to grow. They'd discovered the pregnancy last week, and Sage was still adjusting to the idea that she was carrying the first winter wolf heir in 2 centuries. "Come with me," Daemon said, offering his hand. "There's something I want to show you." They travelled north, just the 2 of them, leaving the capital behind. Sage recognized the territory. They were heading toward the clearing where she'd first found him, dying in the snow. "Why are we going back there?" she asked. "You'll see." The clearing looked different in daylight, peaceful rather than threatening. Snow covered everything in a pristine blanket, and the sun made it sparkle like diamonds. Daemon led her to the exact spot where she'd found him collapsed, where his blood had stained the snow red. "I've been thinking about that night," he said quietly, "about all the coincidences that had to align perfectly for us to end up here. Marcus had to poison me at the exact right dosage, enough to weaken me, but not kill me immediately. The blizzard had to hit at the exact right time to cover my tracks, but not kill me before you found me. And you had to choose to check your traps that specific day, despite the weather. Coincidence, Sage said, or destiny. Depends on what you believe. I believe in choice." Daemon turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Marcus poisoned me, but you chose to save me. The blizzard threatened to kill us both, but you chose to fight it. Your father suppressed your power, but you chose to break free. Every step of the way, you had a choice. And every time, you chose something harder than the alternative. Chose to help instead of walking away, chose to fight instead of hiding, chose to trust instead of staying safe." Sage felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Where are you going with this?" "I'm going here." Daemon dropped to one knee in the snow, and Sage's breath caught. "I know we're already mated, already bonded, already tied together by ancient magic and pack law. But those were circumstances, necessity, destiny, maybe. What I'm asking for now is pure choice." He pulled something from his pocket, a ring carved from ice that somehow didn't melt, glowing with its own inner light. Winter wolf magic, woven by hands more skilled than Sage's. "Freya helped me make it," Daemon explained. "She said it would last as long as our bond does. Forever, in other words." His golden eyes met her blue ones. "Sage Thornridge, Winterwolf Luna, pain in my arse, love of my existence, will you marry me? Not because destiny demands it, not because the bond compels you, but because you choose me. Choose us. Choose this life we're building together." Sage looked down at the man kneeling before her, the Alpha King who'd respected her autonomy from the beginning, the mate who'd trusted her to make her own choices, the partner who'd helped her find strength she didn't know she possessed. She thought about the terrified girl who'd been cast out 3 years ago, who'd built a cabin in the wilderness and resigned herself to dying alone. Then she thought about the woman she'd become, powerful, purposeful, unafraid to fight for what mattered. "You know what the irony is?" she said, kneeling down to face him eye to eye. "I spent 3 years learning to survive alone, learning that I didn't need anyone, that I was enough all by myself. And I was. I am. But you taught me something those 3 years couldn't." "What's that?" "That being strong enough to stand alone doesn't mean you have to. That choosing to build something with someone isn't weakness. It's a different kind of strength." She took the ice ring from his hand and slid it onto her finger, where it settled like it had always belonged there. "Yes, Daemon Shadowmere, I'll marry you. I choose you. I choose us. Every single day." He kissed her then, deep and slow and full of promise. Around them, snow began to fall, not from the sky, but from Sage's power, responding to her joy. It swirled around them in patterns of frost and light, beautiful and controlled, and entirely hers. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Damon rested his forehead against hers. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. "Saving me that day? Everything that's happened since?" Sage thought about the question seriously. The battles she'd fought, the pain she'd endured, the father she'd confronted, the destiny she'd accepted, the freedom she'd surrendered, the power she'd gained, the love she'd found. "I regret taking so long to realize you were worth saving," she said finally, a smile playing at her lips. "Could have saved us both a lot of drama if I just accepted the bond from the beginning." Damon laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Where's the fun in that?" "True." Sage stood, pulling him up with her. She placed his hand on her stomach, where their child grew. "Besides, our daughter needs a good story about how her parents met. Your father was dying, your mother was cursed, and they fell in love while fighting a conspiracy. Is way better than they met at a pack gathering, and it was destiny." "You think it's a girl?" "I know it's a girl." Sage's eyes flashed white briefly. Winter Wolf intuition. She'll be powerful, stubborn, and absolutely terrifying, just like her mother. "Can't wait," Damon said, and meant it. They stood together in the clearing where everything had begun, snow falling around them in patterns of Sage's making. The past was behind them, the pain, the betrayal, the loneliness. The future stretched ahead, uncertain, challenging, but faced together. Sage had learned to survive alone, but she'd chosen to live with someone else, and that, she was discovering, made all the difference. As they turned to head back to the capital, back to their kingdom and their responsibilities and their life together, Sage felt the winter respond to her presence, not as something to be feared or survived, but as an extension of herself. Power she'd been born with, suppressed, denied, and finally reclaimed. She was a winter wolf, a Luna, a queen, a survivor, a fighter. But most importantly, she was herself. And that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe, like and share this video to continue listening to this type of story daily, and also to appreciate this community too. I would like to hear your wonderful opinion about this story. Please comment below.